Bring in Eric Dezenhall. He's the CEO of Dezenhall Resources. Also, Mark Dombroff, who is aviation attorney and a partner at Fox Rothschild. Why don't we start with you, Mark, and just talk a little bit about what we see so far? The stock market is not waiting to see what happens with this. Boeing shares were down 9% last week. They're down more than 1% again this morning. What would you be telling people right now?
Well, I think it's premature to really put too much weight in terms of the text messages that we're looking at. I think clearly a lot of questions have to be asked. Context has to be arrived at. I think we have to know what the follow-through was with respect to Boeing and the test pilots involved. It was in the simulator. It was back in 2016. I think Phil's comment about there's a lot more questions than perhaps there are answers is accurate. And I think for anybody to take any sort of action at this stage or make conclusions at this point really is premature.
I should point out again, you're speaking as a lawyer, not as an analyst who's going to be telling people what to do with the stock. Absolutely. But with the law, you have time on your side. You can kind of wait and follow things through. If you're somebody who's watching what this means to the company, it's $1 billion a month for every month that they don't get that plane back up and running. And I would say, based on the FAA Chiefs' reaction to this, which seemed pretty harsh, pretty stern, kind of questioning why other agencies had access to those texts and messages months ago and they are just getting this. I would say that that does not bode well for that plane being approved by the FAA or any of the international authorities that would have to sign off anytime soon.
Well, I think that's correct. There's different constituencies or stakeholders out there. Certainly the financial markets are one of them. But looking at it from a safety perspective, this all has to be run to the end game in terms of understanding the context of these text messages, just like the whole issue regarding the investigation. So I think, again, various stakeholders move at different speeds and draw various conclusions based upon available information.
Eric, Dennis Muhlenberg goes before Congress and it now has this as the backdrop. Not exactly what they were hoping for. They split the chairman and CEO roles, took the chairmanship away from him, and maybe we're hoping that that would quell some of the anger from Congress. Now you have this kind of kicking everything back up. What would you advise as somebody who is looking at public relations in this front?
Well, I think you have two issues here. You have the real solution, and then you have the theater of crisis management. The real solution has to do with what the real problem is, which is either an engineering problem or the perception of an engineering problem. Until the airlines are comfortable that these problems are caused by X specific thing, and this is the solution, nothing changes. Then you have the theater of crisis management, which is like an episode of Succession, where everybody is sitting around figuring who goes on TV and does the interview and who goes before Congress, because whoever is public ends up losing their job. And that's what's being debated right now. With the revelations over the weekend, what you have is a lot of red meat for the media and for investigators that they're going to have to answer. But ultimately, the solution is going to have to involve diagnosing what the actual problem is here.
Wait a second. Did you just say whoever goes before Congress loses their job? Are you suggesting Muhlenberg loses his job if he goes before Congress with this?
What I'm suggesting is whoever becomes the public face of this, of something like this, often loses their job, because in the theater of crisis management that we're dealing with, people think that that is the answer, whether or not it really is, because this is the time that we're living in, when people don't understand that most of these crises are not resolved through a PR ploy. They are resolved by solving whatever the engineering, mechanical, operational problem is.
Mark, I would take that a step further. I would say what Eric laid out about was there an engineering problem? Is there a fix? I would say on top of that, Boeing now has the issue of have they been forthright? Has there been pressure on their employees, as the Journal says today, to try and put forth and push on safety standards before they were actually ready to do that? I think that is probably the biggest problem facing Boeing, particularly if they're going to be taking these on to the courts. What do you think?
Well, I think, again, it's kind of premature to talk about pressure on Boeing employees. I saw the story in the Journal. I saw it was a survey involving something in the order of 500 employees, and it had to do with former employees. And I think there was a reference to potential stress. The fact of the matter is, in virtually every business, including in the aviation industry, there's stress, there's pressure. to maintain schedules and so forth.
Right, but you've got over 350 people who are dead.
Well, I think in the context that we're talking about, though, against the backdrop of 2 accidents and the controversies that surround it and the investigation, something that is common in most industries in terms of pressure to move things forward takes on a special significance, but I'm not prepared at this point to say that there's really anything significant about that story.
Think there's nothing to see here?
I think it's premature to say that there is anything to see here, just like it's premature.
Something to see here. Whether it was intentional or not intentional, you're talking again about more than 350 people who died on 2 separate accidents. The airline waited after both those accidents to actually, the company waited to actually ground those. And now you're talking about international flight administrators who are going to be questioning this very broadly.
Well, I think what we're really talking about right now is the investigation and what that investigation yields. So I think it's premature. We don't have either investigation out from either the Indonesians or the Ethiopians. So to jump to conclusions is premature.
It does mean that you are going to be looking at longer delays. Maybe we'll see something in November from the Ethiopia situation.
Agreed.
It does mean that we're going to be looking at a lot longer before you see anything. This is not something that's going to get covered up. Somebody's going to get to the bottom of it, one way or the other.